In an email sent to members about the gathering, Alliance President Kathleen Zgama gushed about Zink's support for her group and complimented his energy dominance plan President Trump's strategy for opening up federal lands to more petroleum production. Fossil fuel interests are pulling the strings at Trump's Interior Department, just as they did at Bush's Interior Department, says Congressman Raul Grijalva, D. Arizona, the new chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee. Democrats on the Natural Resources Committee want to know how deep this influence runs and how we can break this cycle of making up rules to suit fossil fuel companies' demands regardless of congressional intent or public opinion. Zgama did not respond to multiple requests for comment and declined to answer questions regarding this story. For many years, a main target of the alliance has been the conservation plan for the sage grouse. Few Americans have seen or even heard of this chicken-like bird, but at one point around 16 million of them ranged across 290 million acres, an ocean of sagebrush across the West. Because of habitat loss caused by road construction, development, and oil and gas leasing, only 200,000 to 500,000 sage grouse remain today. In 2010, a court ordered the federal government to either address this habitat loss or list the sage grouse under the Endangered Species Act. With only around half of the remaining sage grouse habitat on federal land, federal agencies began working with several governors and 1,100 ranchers across 11 states to protect and improve over 70 million acres of sagebrush. Finalized in 2015, the plan also provides habitat for over 350 different species, such as mule deer, elk, pronghorn, and golden eagles. The effects of this plan touch so many species and stretches across several western states, says Nada Culver, senior counsel with the Wilderness Society. If you wanted to undermine protections for endangered species, she says, it would be the place to start. The summer after Trump entered office, Alliance President Zgama wrote to the Interior Department to complain about the sage grouse. In her letter, Zgama claimed that sage grouse management would cost more than 9,000 oil and gas jobs and impede $2.4 billion in economic growth. After examining correspondence between the Interior Department and industry lobbyists, the Western Values Project found that Trump officials accepted 13 of Zgama's 15 recommendations to alter sage grouse protection. When the administration released a revised sage grouse plan a year ago, Zinke sent an internal memo that reversed the Obama administration's focus on developing oil and gas outside of grouse habitat. The laws provide the framework for federal policy, but federal agencies and officials have great latitude to interpret their legal mandates, to fill in the details of how policies should be implemented, and to assign priorities and budget resources, says Bob Dreyer, a vice president at the Defenders of Wildlife who previously served as legal advisor to several federal agencies. Last year, HuffPost reported that the alliance made it easier for companies to avoid environmental concerns when drilling, and the New York Times found that the alliance had a hand in streamlining the leasing process so that citizens had less time to protest oil and gas leases. More than 12.8 million acres of federal land were offered up for leasing last year, triple the average under President Barack Obama's administration. To buttress his claims, Coleman cites a 19-page letter Zgama wrote to Zinke in August 2017 asking for a fleet of changes to how the department regulates petroleum production. The alliance submitted the letter through the federal website, and its lobbyist then forwarded it to several agency officials. Zinke's deputy chief of staff emailed back, "Thanks for flagging." After reading the letter, Coleman began tracking department memos and digging through public records to find evidence that the Interior Department granted Alliance's wishes. In late December 2017, Zinke's deputy, David Bernhard, sent a memo that responded to the Alliance's wish to roll back mitigation measures instituted by Obama that incorporated climate pollution concerns into drilling plans. Coleman says that memo effectively ended any attempt by agency employees to force companies to mitigate the effects of oil and gas drilling. Coleman found a second example in a department memo sent over the summer on drilling activity that affects a mix of federal and private lands. In the past, this triggered the need for an environmental analysis of the drilling impacts. But the June memo rescinded this requirement as the alliance had requested. Oil and gas development fragments and degrades habitat so that federal officials will no longer consider that land useful in species protection. We've seen arguments from the oil and gas industry that once you have a hole in the ground, that land can't be counted as habitat, Culver says. She adds that leasing federal property drives a stake in the ground, marking territory as belonging to industry. Once you have a lease, it's there for at least 10 years. And it's considered a right that is given a lot of deference by the federal agencies. The Trump administration's record at the Interior Department is clear: we are striking a balance between conservation and responsible energy development on federal lands, says Department spokesman Eli Nachmani. Everyday Americans, like those who have spent time enjoying any of the hundreds of thousands of acres of public land on which this administration has opened or expanded hunting and fishing opportunities, understand this. Nachmani did not respond to questions about the Western Energy Alliance. With Zinke gone from Interior, environmentalists say they do not expect the alliance's influence to abate since Trump nominated the deputy administrator, Bernhard, as the replacement. Zgama has praised Bernhard as the man who has been running policy at Interior, and both he and the alliance have similar allies. Prior to joining the administration, Bernhard served on the board of a small nonprofit that works on endangered species policies called the Center for Environmental Science, Accuracy and Reliability, or CSER. For many years, the alliance has hired a scientist on the board of CSER to conduct studies that it cites later in letters to the Interior Department as cause to roll back endangered species protection. While some media reports label CSER an environmental advocacy group and others a think tank, the group is noted for taking stands on endangered species issues that favor industry. Representative Grijalva is also disturbed. As we've seen for years, this whole campaign is driven by a small group of closely connected extractive industry figures, including Deputy Secretary Bernhard, Grijalva said. It has nothing to do with any legitimate public interest, but that hasn't stopped Republicans in Congress or the Trump administration in the past, and it won't now. Paul D. Thacker is a journalist based in Washington, D.C. and Madrid.